Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Pen and Heal podcast. I am your host, Javeria Fatima Zaidi, and founder of Pen and Heal. As an expressive writing life coach, I specialize in guiding highly sensitive women on their journey to self discovery, on their journey of personal growth, and I also help them to attain their goals using the transformative power of expressive writing. I'm excited today to introduce someone that I've known for more than 20 years at this point. She's Indian, I'm Pakistani, but we both grew up in the UAE. And we met when we joined a madrasa, which is an Islamic Sunday school on the weekends. I think I was around 13 or 14. We'll ask her how old we were, but we were in our teens when we met. And so it's been a long time since we've known each other. She has always been an inspiration for me. We both used to wear hijab by the time that we met, but I hadn't yet, and I haven't to this day. I don't think I've met a lot of people who have the same level of faith as her. She was the first girl that I knew of who wore hijab and no makeup on her wedding day, and she looked beautiful. I saw her do hijab the way hijab is meant to be done, and I found that quite inspirational. She's a motivational speaker. She has a background in psychology and counseling. She does a million things, but right now we'll focus on these things. And she is the founder of a company called Goal Achievers, which is perfect because that's what we want to know. How do we achieve our goals? So please join me in welcoming Syeda Zainab to the podcast. Zainab, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good, Javeria. That was quite an introduction. And you said 20 years, and I'm thinking, really? Is it really been that much? Oh,
Yeah,
20 years.
yeah.
Wow.
It's been more than 20 years. How old do you think we were? I'm thinking 13 or 14. And I'm 35 now, so that's 21 years if we were 14.
Oh, wow. No, I think we were younger because I remember I was in seventh or eighth grade when I started. So that would have been 12, 13. Yeah, 12,
Yeah,
13.
so
Wow.
definitely more than like we are vintage then.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
that's
Uh,
amazing.
yes, yes. Wow. It really is
So
amazing.
yeah, and like I was telling you before we began recording that obviously we're currently recording this in November 2024, but I don't want to begin without acknowledging the atrocities that are happening in Palestine. Like we need to take a moment to acknowledge what has been happening for more than a month at this point.
Yeah.
And as a motivational speaker, I know there's nothing motivational about it, but I would love to hear from you what lessons we can learn looking at the fate of the Palestinians.
Um, I mean, definitely it's actually unbelievable when we think about 1 month. It's 1.5 months now. And I think lessons I think this specific genocide has rung and hit different spots in different people's hearts. And I think there's so many things that we can learn from just the way that we live our own lives. And one of the things that struck to me was just the fact that all of this is happening on the same planet as us,
Mm,
and it's almost so difficult to accept that it is the same planet,
mm,
and just in that same. I mean, it's always something that makes me, just gobsmacked. I don't know how to express myself when I think about that. And I think it has made all of us be a little bit more grateful, and people like us who are not that close to the area right now are able to kind of look at our children, and not just us be grateful for them and their safety and the way they are living, but also ingrain that sense of gratefulness in them no matter what age they are. Because one of the things that Palestine has really shown to us is age is no bar when it comes to sacrifice. Age is me. I think that was one of the things that was really striking. And
mm,
one other thing that was I just pointed out yesterday on my Instagram was the fact that we keep talking about, the women and children, and the women and children. They didn't even spare the women and children, but the fact that the civilian men are just as innocent, you
yeah,
know, and the world's focus on the women and children, as it should be. I'm not, anti that. I'm completely
yeah,
pro that. But
mm,
the way the narrative shifts, when
Yeah.
atrocities happens and all the equality of men and women just goes out the window, when the catastrophe strikes, it's all about save the women and children. Oh, it's happening to the women and children. Yeah, but what about the men?
What about
what
the
happened
men?
to the equality? Yeah, where did that equality, where did that stand
Yeah.
go? Is it okay? And I was just thinking, whenever we see these videos, it's the men who are digging people out of the, out of the buildings. It's the men who are carrying these kids, ladies, and other people. We have not seen a lot of women doing that, and not that they should be doing that, but it kind
Mm,
of goes to show how important it is for us to assume our roles and become comfortable in our roles, because when the time comes, we will shine through. The mother holding the baby will shine through. The father pulling his, gathering the remains of his sons will, shine through. And
mm.
like, we all know it's gathering the whole world together and, uniting everyone in humanity.
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
so much we can learn from Palestine.
Absolutely. I mean, I think so many of us can relate to that, Zainab, that difficulty
Yes.
in expressing, because there's such a depth of emotion there. And it is honestly, it really is gobsmacking how are the world leaders sitting back and like letting this happen. Like the world is going crazy. People are protesting, like all of our hearts are breaking collectively, and these this small number of men, and not even just the white men, the Arabs, like how,
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
it's just
it's really
literally,
sad.
you lose all powers of expression. And I think at that point all we can do is cry, like literally
Yeah,
that's the only thing that makes sense. Like all we can do is cry, but we will not give up faith, and we will continue raising our voices
yes,
and using our platforms, inshallah, to raise
definitely.
awareness for this issue.
Yes, it's the least we can do. It's the
It's the
least we
least we
can
can
do
do.
at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like one thing that I keep thinking is this is a real life Karbala happening in front of our eyes. We
Yes,
talk about Karbala and we say, oh, if I had been there, if I well, you're here now, what are you doing? Whatever you're doing
yeah,
now is what you would have done at that time. It's
true.
oh my God, and it truly is, it's heartbreaking.
Yes,
Not that we can move on from that so easily, but we do have
yes.
something to focus on in this podcast. So to start us off, Zainab, would you tell us a little bit about your journey? How did you become a motivational speaker? And I know you've gone through your psychology degree and you've done your counseling course, and obviously, you have your personal life and you have a professional life. And how has that been for you? Can you share that with us?
It's not been easy to say the least, because I personally have this theory that everybody's life has a pattern.
Mm,
And my life's pattern has always been that the most basic things become the most difficult things to do. And I started to accept that and embrace that, and that made life a little bit easy. But for me, just getting the degree was an issue.
mm,
I had enrolled in a course. I mean, I wanted to do psychology, but I had happened to be enrolled in a course where nobody else applied, so there were no seats. Like they had a minimum number of applicants, and then that got cancelled. So then I continued with whatever course they were providing me with, which was mass comm, and I dropped out of that because 6 months in, I was like, this is not what I want to do. So I dropped out of degree. And that was a huge thing. To drop out of college in India is like a thing. Okay. And
mm,
so I dropped out of college, which was, you know, and then after I had my daughter, who was a premature baby, I was like, no, I cannot have, a child and not be a graduate. That's too low of a standard that I'm setting as a mother, for my daughter. So she inspired me to push aside all of the struggles of dealing and taking care of a preemie, and it was just few months after that she was born, that not she was not even a year, that I applied for my bachelor's in psychology. So I did that. I did my BSc in psychology, and then that took some extra years to complete because of all kinds of issues and reasons. And that happened, and then I pursued a course in counseling. It was a 6 month course. It was a really good one. It was a very good one. I did a course in that, and I also learned, while I was in the process of learning all the things that I was learning through my psychology courses, was that I was the kind of person who liked to do lots of things. I was not the kind of person who had the personality of sticking to one thing. And so I did storytelling. Whatever I did, I learned it fully. Like I did,
mm,
the basic course that I would do, the intensive course, and then I started to realize, like, my life has this pattern of struggle, and I have a motto of never say never. So I kept
Mm.
pursuing whatever felt, it was interesting. It could fit into my timeline. It could fit into, my budget or whatever. And I just kept pursuing. And while I kept pursuing that, I realized that I really had an impact when I spoke to people. Like I
Mm.
initially wanted to speak to people, and I felt that I had the skill of speaking, so to say. But I realized that people like to listen to me as well, which was something that only people can tell you. So when I
Mm.
discovered that people also were interested in listening to what I had to say, because for the longest time in my life, I didn't have the confidence that who would want to listen to me,
Mm.
who am I? That kind of self-doubt was there. And then when I started to realize that people were getting impacted and they were getting that, positive effect. And I was like, even if it's one person, why not? You know? So that's how the pursuing of motivational speaking happened. And
Mm.
I couldn't pick up a niche initially, so I just thought, let me just call myself a neutral motivational speaker and
Mm.
reach out to as many audiences as possible,
Mm.
and use the same logic of let's see how people respond and who responds the best, because I just wanted to be useful. So I
Yeah.
wanted to be useful to the people who would need me the most.
Mm.
So that's kind of how it all went. Yeah.
And who has needed you the most, and where have you ended up with your niche?
So I discovered, yeah. So it didn't take too long for me to realize that it was the women, and it was
Mm.
specifically the women within my community, because even the
Yeah.
men within the communities used to say that there's not enough women speaking within our
Mm.
community, and so they were like, we need more women to speak, because who is going to be the voice of these ladies who are not able to speak? And I was like,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Who thought of that? You know
Mm. Mm.
and so now it's mostly women and women within the community,
Mm.
the Muslim community by
Yeah.
and large. And so I try to keep it as open as possible. Online has made it easy to cater to all of India or even internationally.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in Hyderabad, obviously, it's they get to come to meet me and we get to interact more in person.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a different energy in person. I know because
Yes,
when I attend workshops and stuff. But even your online things, your online programs are amazing. I've been to your workshop and I learned so
right,
much. That was an
right,
amazing experience.
right. Thank
And
you.
it's so funny, talking about social media. Like I remember we used to communicate via emails, and I
Yes,
used to wait for your emails. I loved your emails. I would wait for your updates. So I can almost attest to the fact that yes, you have been a lifelong learner. And I remember, I think you mentioned to me that you had your baby, and you sent me pictures of your daughter. And then I remember us having this conversation that you're going to either you started your BSc or you were going to start. And I remember thinking, and I was back in Dubai at the time, and I was like, wow, this girl, like she's, and then you started your madrasa as well. I mean, there's again, like I said,
yes,
there's so much that you do. But it's really interesting what you said, that you identified a pattern in your life. And the biggest thing it sounds like is that the biggest thing was you accepted the pattern. And instead
yes,
of going against the current, you accepted it and you made it work for you, no matter how difficult it was.
yes, yeah. It was very difficult to accept it. I mean, I also,
Yeah.
I think when you're young, you always keep thinking everybody has it easy, because I
Mm.
got married really young. So for
Yeah.
me, it was all like, I'm married with a baby, and none of my friends are, even close. They were doing their
Yeah.
degrees and getting their driving licenses and living it up.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
was like, and I was very secluded because of that, because nobody I knew was going through, even within my cousins. I didn't know
Yeah. Yeah.
anybody my age going through what I was going through. So,
Yeah.
everything seems even more, tough when you're alone doing it.
Yeah.
And I think the lack of empathy and understanding from elders, because they think, oh, it's marriage, so that's how it
Mm.
is. It's a pattern, ABC. But for me,
Mm.
it was quite a bit of it was quite a bit of a journey. And yeah, I realized that, I realized when I saw that, I started to speak to people, and I realized that there's somebody who constantly only has health issues. Then there is
Mm.
this one lady who constantly only has money issues. And there is this uncle who's constantly whining about one other, relative. And I was like, okay, fine. It seems like all their life they only had this one struggle. I was like, maybe
Mm.
mine is that it's going to be difficult. And when I'll get out of it, and if I'm open enough to speak about it, then other people will be like, somebody else is going through the same. Because I never found that. I couldn't
Yeah.
speak to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that
So
was
that,
really a thing.
yeah. And what you've just said is that other people would find it relatable. That actually segues perfectly into what I wanted to ask next. I was just thinking, how has your background, your psychology background, your personal experiences, the background of that, how has that impacted your professional career as a motivational speaker? Would you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so when I was initially thinking about speaking and I was researching and I was listening to lots of podcasts about people who coach to become speakers and how to
Yeah.
start your speaking career and things like that. When I was listening to these people, I used to notice that they all had a focus, like they wanted to do something, like they wanted to contribute within the business community or how to make money community or educate yourself or homeschool or something. They had something.
Mm,
And I realized that, I was just thinking, what is it that is unique to me? Because I don't have a lot of degree, I don't have expertise in this, and I don't have expertise in that. And then I
mm,
realized that maybe my expertise is just the fact that my life has been so complex and nobody speaks about complex issues within the, at least not within the women,
yeah.
because through my experiences of everything that I went through personally in my life, I realized that, when I used to go through something big, some auntie used to come back and say, yeah, even I had a miscarriage. And I used to be like, then why did nobody, like, how come nobody else knows? And how is this like a secret that you tell me? And I was like, why are people not speaking about this? You know? And I realized that more and more women were suffering, with a lot of things that they were just not speaking about because nobody was speaking about it. So I
Mm.
thought, that's it. I have no shame. I've always been a person who's like, no shame. So I thought, let me just be the one who embraces all the garbage,
Mm,
and speaks about it so much that people start relating.
mm.
Yeah. So I kind of
I
just
love that.
found out.
I can
Yeah.
already see that being the when I put up a snippet of this episode, I have no shame. That will be that will be the one that draws in everyone. I have no shame. Who is this lady who
Yeah.
is saying this?
I mean,
Okay.
I've been told by people that we've not met anybody like you. And I was like, what do you mean you've not met anybody like me? There's like, you just
Mm,
say anything without, like, there's no filter, and it doesn't
mm,
seem
mm.
like there is a filter. And I was like, there's no need for a filter because
Yeah,
then you won't know what it is, and I will not be able
yeah,
to relate to you with a filter
yeah,
on.
exactly.
Yeah.
You're just very honest and straightforward. And I appreciate that. I've appreciated that ever since we've known each other. So, hmm. So I know that you're a motivational speaker, and you work to empower women, and you also do coaching, right? You have
Yes.
done group coaching, and so basically you have found different ways of using your experiences to empower women, right? Now,
Right.
if we can get into the little bit of the technical side, whether you use this in the motivational speaking engagements, or whether you do this as a coach, how do you go about empowering women? Like for the women who are listening in, you know
Yeah.
I want to provide them with as much value as we can. How do you go about sort of helping them move forward from wherever they're stuck?
I feel like women, I have mostly worked with only a specific type. So
Mm,
within the Indian, time frame, and even if I have people who come from outside India who are attending anything, they
yeah,
tend to be Indian or Pakistani. So I may not have experience that would blanket help everyone, but what I
yeah.
did realize was women just wanted to know that somebody else was suffering just as much as them.
Okay.
And that was something that I realized, like, after so many sessions. And I it was not something that I was intending to do, but then I
Yeah.
realized that women wanted to know that there were more women like them. More,
Mm,
so that could be a woman that is more vulnerable, or similarly vulnerable, somebody who is sensitive, somebody who is angry, somebody who is
mm,
ashamed, somebody who's resentful, could be anything. They just
yeah.
wanted to know. And then once they got to know that there is more like me, they started to get empowered and
Mm,
feel that, okay, so now how I'm feeling is valid because somebody else is
mm,
feeling it too. Because
right.
within their small circle, they were not able to find. And that's how I started the coaching as well. Because I
Right.
realized that I was getting all these DMs from ladies, and or after the event, they used to reach out to me. And then I was like, no, 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 you're saying you're the only one. But I was like, no, I know somebody just like you. And I know
Mm,
somebody who's going through similar things as you. So
yeah.
then I thought, no, I need to get these ladies together, and that's how the coaching
Mm,
also happened. So I
right.
know that was one of the ways that I was able to, I am able to empower women by making them feel that you're not alone in whatever it is,
Right. Yeah.
and
And
you
that's a
have to
valuable
find your
message.
tribe.
You
Yes,
have to find your
you have to
tribe,
find
right?
your tribe. You have to find your
Yeah.
tribe. Anybody who comes and tells me there's not, these kind of ladies in Hyderabad, or there's not this in Hyderabad, or there's not this in India, or within our community. I was like, no, you've just not found them. It cannot be. There is a whole world out there. It cannot be,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I can I just say it's so refreshing?
I can't hear you. You got stuck.
Mm,
The video is stuck. Yep.
all right. So sorry about that. Wonderful internet. This is just one of the setbacks of working online. So I was basically saying that I appreciate your honesty. And normally I stay away from motivational speakers. There are very few that I actually like listening to because I don't know why, but people think that to be a motivational speaker, you have to be full of fluff and sort of say things that people want to hear. Whereas I feel that that does the opposite, right? You want to be honest and actually help people to move forward. So it sounds like you've been able to identify where people need help and how you can actually help them. And there is nothing more motivational than that, right?
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
before we were disconnected, you told us how you had basically effectively created a community of women. You identified that women needed a community, and you were able to form that community, and that's how your group coaching programs were formed. So in your group coaching and in your communities where you've put people together, what would you say? And I know that you said that you work with a specific clientele, by and large Muslims, and mostly from the Desi community, Indians or Pakistanis,
Yes.
similar sort of backgrounds. What have been their most common challenges, would you say?
I think lots of them have lost their sense of identity.
Okay.
At least the ones that I have spoken to, they've lost the sense of who they are, or they've never discovered it.
Okay.
They never
Yeah.
thought about themselves. So
Mm.
it was always you as in an identity always attached to someone else. So you're either
Mm.
a daughter, you're either a sister, you're either a sibling, and then you just it's always evolved as so you identify yourself with the people around you. That was one of the things that I noticed, and I also noticed that even if they had something, they second guessed themselves to the point where they would not share their issues with somebody. And they also have this common thread of I don't want to tell my mom because she'll get stressed, and I don't want to stress her. Now I'm married, I should be able to handle it on my own. I can't tell my sibling because then why should I tell my sibling? And
Mm.
I don't have friends anymore because I left them long back when I got married. So
Mm.
they've kind of only evolved as per what was told them to evolve into.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, and that has been one of the major reasons why I feel like when you said about the motivational speakers also, right? They will always, like you said, the fluff. It's all the gimmick. It's about the
Mm.
sales, basically. That's
Yeah.
I've attended plenty of those webinars myself, and I was yucked out. I was like, I don't want to be associated. But I realized that when we actually start to focus on the core, which is why I used to start taking the more religious perspective on things, then
Mm.
people started to get attracted even more, because then I think that is when they could see that this is beyond feeling good for the moment or feeling good for the day. And so the ladies that I met, they also wanted, because they knew that their issues were very long and lengthy, and they wanted solutions that were more permanent or going towards a more permanent end.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, obviously, with permanence, that's where faith comes in, and it can really
Yes.
help ground you and give you some
Yep.
long-term solutions. So let's say that you have one of your typical ladies with you. She has a loss of identity, and she has this severe imposter syndrome that nothing she does is ever good enough. And she also has a case of this. I will call it. I don't know if there's an official term, but I'll call it the martyrdom syndrome. Which we which
Mm.
which we see in the
Yes.
traditional woman, that, oh, I should be able to do all of it by myself, I cannot burden anyone else, and
Yes.
we end up becoming martyrs. What is it that you ask them or say to them? How do you get them out of this zone that they've confined themselves into?
I asked them. So this is something that really, like, it's a little freaky to say, but I keep telling them that if you died tomorrow, would you be questioned for the 100 things that you're doing, or you
Mm.
just put them onto yourself? Because and then they just go like, Because truly
Right.
we are doing things beyond and the God's expectation of us, and then we are constantly sad that nobody appreciates it. But so I tell them that if you died tomorrow, would it matter?
Yeah.
Like, would that be the thing that you would be questioned on? Or would
Mm.
you be questioned on how you have become the person that you've become, so weak or so sensitive, so easily irritated, so aggressive? Is that what God is going to ask you about? How did you treat yourself,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to the 100 things on the list that you did? And that
Yeah.
kind of really, like, death always scares people. And it's always the kind of reality bite that we sometimes need when you're really in deep stress. i
Yeah.
i tend to use that, this just pull the bandit out.
Mm.
And it hurts at first to even listen to speaking about death, and it's just
Yeah.
out of the blue for anybody who's attending a session, but they do get that feeling of, oh yes, because in the end the reality is death. It's
Mm.
inevitable, it's going to happen, you cannot escape it. Then if I'm not preparing for the death, then what am I preparing for? Like, what is
Yeah.
all this for?
Yeah.
you know
So basically, you light a fire under them, basically,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
by
yeah.
yeah, by asking them
It's
to put things in perspective, right? It's all about
yes,
prioritizing that when you're
yes,
overwhelmed, you look at what is really important, what really matters, and that's how you do this.
yes.
So, funnily enough, you mentioned sensitivity, and of course, my ears instantly pricked up. So let's jump into sensitivity then. So, my niche is highly sensitive women, and I
Yes,
know you
yes,
have some thoughts about that. Let's say
yes.
a highly sensitive woman comes to you. How would you cater to the needs of a highly sensitive individual?
So in my experience, for the longest time, like, so before I really discovered the highly sensitive person syndrome or whatever it is, before I discovered it, all of these symptoms that I had seen before in clients, I used to think of them as something that was learned because the pattern was such. They
Mm,
were replicating exactly what their mom did, but the results were different for them because the generation has changed. Okay. So I used to notice it and see, okay, okay, fine, it worked for your mom and she sacrificed and she had a whole fleet of people who could praise her and she had friends. Time was
mm,
slow, there was no technology, whatever. So I started to realize only after I found out the term that I realized that, oh, so it could be genetic. Because
yeah.
from what I was able to see, that it was mostly learned because girls, because the clientele is girls. I have not met any highly sensitive men, as of now. And I
Yeah.
don't think I will with, the kind of people that I'm working with. I'm only working with women.
Yeah.
But I did notice that these women were taught to be extra observant of their surroundings. Like, so
Mm,
if you're doing something, pay attention to what somebody else might need and get them
mm,
that. Or
mm,
think about others before you think about yourself, to the point where you become the last person on the list.
right.
And many such things. And even I was taught, growing up, that you are the girl, so you have to be more careful, you are the girl, so
Mm,
you be pay attention. So it was
mm,
more of an observant thing, to be more
yeah.
observant of the surroundings. So when you
Yeah.
start being so observant, you
Yeah.
start to even feel and empathize with the emotions that somebody else might be going through, even if it was an expression, because your task is to observe, your task is
Yeah.
to pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was not like that. So for the life of me, I couldn't understand. you know I while I could pick up on emotions, in terms of, I could pick up, like, I remember I had a friend who called me once, and she just said hi, and I said, why are you depressed? And she said,
Mm,
how did you know? I was like, I can make out.
mm,
So that way I am able to pick up deep emotions that even the person sometimes may not be able to, or must be hiding. But
mm.
apart from that, no. So I do feel that it is learned, but I guess we do know that a lot of it is also to do with genetics and all of
Yeah.
that. I have
So
just see
what
the
you've pointed out is very interesting. That is a cultural thing, and that's a very interesting intersection between culture, where a lot of those behaviors mimic how high sensitivity would show up in a person, and
yes,
then there's actual true sensitivity. So in a situation or an environment like that, I imagine it would be very difficult to separate and to
yes,
understand what is the learned behavior and what is the innate trait, right? And
yes,
because we're on the topic, I would just like to clarify for the viewers that yes, highly sensitive men do exist. I understand completely that you don't deal with them, and so of course, even I just work
yes,
with women. But definitely, there are, it just high sensitivity is basically about 15 to 20% of a population, and
wow.
that has even been observed in the animal kingdom, not just humans.
Mm,
So
who knew?
yeah,
Oh my God.
there's a
Oh,
whole lot of
Javeria
research.
educating us. This is so
Yeah,
interesting. I didn't know it was there in animals, man.
yeah, yeah.
That is
So
wow.
Yeah, and the thing is, again, Dr. Elaine Aaron is the person to research, and her colleagues, they have done a lot of research into this. And so basically, the high sensitivity is a trait, right? Which predisposes you towards certain behaviors, but then environment also plays a role. So it's that nature versus nurture debate
Mm-hmm.
which comes in, you know, in anything really, which that debate
Yeah.
is sort of always valid. So it's not necessary for a person to behave in a certain way. But of course, that hypervigilance that comes with high sensitivity, if it is being
Mm.
taught, which it is in Desi cultures, which we know, in that case, things become a bit muddy, right?
Mm.
So definitely, so I appreciate your insights about this. I appreciate your awareness that this is the culture and this is the trait, and it's sometimes difficult to separate the two. But at the end of the day, what you do is you look for what the woman needs and you
Yeah.
provide that. So I think that's
Yes.
the most important thing here.
Right.
In my, if I give you my personal experience, my daughter, my older one, she showed signs of high sensitivity when she was 9 months old.
What? Ooh. Who
I
knew?
I
Like it
was
goes
so
back that
Yeah.
young.
Yes.
Wow.
By that time, a child is showing that they haven't learned anything. They haven't
Mm.
learned, but it was, how did it show up for her? For example, I used to think maybe she has sensory processing disorder. For the longest time, for a few years, I thought maybe she has sensory processing disorder because there would be an ice cream truck would go by a couple of roads down from our house, and I could hear it in distance, but she would cover her ears, and she was around when she was around 2, for example. And I'd ask her, and she's like, "Oh, but that there's a sound, that sound." And I said, "But it's so far away." But it bothered her. Or
Mm.
when she was 11 months old, this is this sort of sealed the deal for me that okay, there's I need to be. I didn't know what high sensitivity was at that point, but I knew that I had to look out for something. She was
Mm-hmm.
sitting in her grandfather's lap, and she did something funny, and everyone just sort of smiled. There was no big noise. It's not like there was a burst of laughter or anything, but everyone just looked at her, and everyone just sort of smiled. It wasn't a big moment at all. She
Mm-hmm.
turned around, she looked at everyone, she looks around the room, and she burst into tears. I think she cried for 40 minutes or something.
Ooh.
She was just so embarrassed. And this was just one of the things that I had been
Wow.
noticing for a long time. But after this incident, I was like, because I used to question myself, can it really be? Can such a young
Mm-hmm.
child really be so affected by something as small as this? But yes, they can. So then I started, and then I was like, is it sensory processing disorder? It wasn't sensory processing disorder because it wasn't bad enough to be classified as a disorder. Like there's a whole, we can have a whole conversation about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But another name for high sensitivity for those who want to research about it is sensory processing sensitivity. It's basically that
Mm.
because the highly sensitive brain is getting so many sensory inputs, they burn out quicker. They have a bigger reaction. They will need
Mm.
more time to recharge. But at the same time, that is not an excuse for misbehavior or for acting in antisocial ways, for example. It's not an excuse. You learn to deal with it. You learn to still be a
Yeah.
good
To
human being.
cope
You
and
learn
yes.
to,
Yeah.
exactly, you learn to cope with it. Exactly. So, I mean, talking about, because we spoke about high sensitivity. So for me, because this is my niche, for
Yes.
me, high sensitivity and writing sort of go hand in hand. My personal experience and things that I've seen in my clients. So I would like to ask you that, putting sensitivity aside in general, do you think there can be a link between writing and personal development or self-growth, attainment of goals? What would you say about that? Writing in any
Yeah.
form.
Firstly, thank you so much for all of the. I didn't know so many of the things that you were saying about high sensitivity. I'm thinking, oh, what maybe that person, maybe that person, maybe that person, you know. But that's
Yeah.
just wow. I think it's really good that you're educating women about this. It's
Yeah.
yeah, God knows how many of them have it. Like 15-20% is a big chunk of the population.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Coming back to the writing, yes, I am a very firm believer of the writing thing. Okay,
Mm.
because um number one, I prefer to speak to yourself, but then you just sound mad and look mad to other people. So the other silent way of doing is to write. And i
Yeah.
have i have used this a lot with some of my clients, and I've told them that
Mm.
whatever is coming to your mind, that word vomit, let it make sense, let it not make sense, no matter what language is it, just write, 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 just don't stop. Like you sit with a good sharpened pencil or a pen full of ink and just keep going till it's all out. Because I feel when the mind is cluttered, you'll anyway not make good decisions in your life.
Hmm.
And the way to unclutter the mind is you cannot do dusting, you cannot take things out, you cannot actually pull it apart in pieces, the only tactile way of doing that is to put it all down, and visually when you start seeing what you're
Yeah.
thinking, and I just feel like that kind of changes the whole narrative of what has been going on in the brain. And
Yeah.
because I experienced that when I was really young myself. I used to write diaries, and I had too much time in hand, right? So it was all the dear diary and all of that. And I used
Yeah.
to think that while I used to write, I was like, am I really feeling this way? What, like, as though I didn't have control over how my brain and my hand were connecting and, flowing. And so I realized early on, when I was younger, that this works. This gives you a perspective beyond what your brain is telling you. The narrative completely shifts. So
Yeah.
I do use it in my sessions as well, especially when I'm talking to women about when they say that I am overwhelmed. Take out a
Hmm.
piece of paper and just start writing. That
Yeah. Yeah.
overwhelm it needs to be in words on paper, and
Yeah.
that's the only way you can visualize it. And just it's really powerful what a pen and paper can do. And
Yeah.
nobody has the time. The whole excuse is the time. So now I
Yeah.
try to say, type it out, man. Type it out. Just open
Exactly.
whatever app you have. Just type,
Yeah.
get it out of your system before you start bursting it out on somebody else, or you start showing it, in different ways, and then you're more confused about why did I do that. So
Yeah.
I do believe it works. I know you do a lot of work with the writing and all. I keep seeing the posts on Instagram. They're really very interesting. I've shared it to a few
Yeah.
of my friends and people. It's really interesting what
Yeah.
you do.
Thank you.
What is
Yeah.
it that how do you do it? What is the process that you use for this?
So, for example, I'll answer that. Let me just respond to what you just said. I was just thinking, I've written something down actually when you were talking. You are so full of one-liners. I love it. I've got another one. I have no problem promoting this particular episode. You know what? You should sit down with a well-sharpened pencil or a pen full of ink. I love that. I love that. Exactly. Yes. Okay, how I use it, how I use
Yeah.
writing with my
Hmm.
clients. So
Yes.
basically, I'll have a framework, right? I will obviously I'll speak to them before the sessions begin. So I'll have a free consultation to see if we gel, if I can actually help this person. If I decide
Hmm.
that yes, this is a person I can work with, I can help her. If I can't help them, I'll be very honest and I'll tell them, there's someone else who might be able to help you better, and I'll refer them on. And I've done that. For example, I once had someone who I felt like her issues were so deep that maybe therapy would have been a better option than coaching, because
Hmm.
coaching is very specific towards one goal. Therapy
Yeah.
can various therapy can look at various issues. So after I've decided that okay, I can work with this person, depending on the package that they've booked, depending on the number of weeks they'll be working with me, I will make a framework. Like my
Hmm.
goal is to help them get closer to their goal, right? What are the steps to
Hmm.
achieve that? Then within each session, will talk and we'll ask questions. But I always utilize writing. I will ask them to first of all keep a diary in between sessions. I encourage them to write. Doesn't have to be every single day. Doesn't have to be for like half an hour, but write regularly. But in session, whenever a client gets stuck, right? One of the things that I will always ask my client is that what is the one thing, what is the easiest and the smallest thing you can do regularly to achieve your goal? And
Hmm.
99% of the time, they're like, I'm not sure. Then I say, write about it. Write the question and just begin writing. And I tell them that even if you don't know the answer, what you were basically describing, that's what I tell them. Just do a brain dump. If you're thinking, I don't know the answer to this, write, I don't know the answer to this. Keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. And then at the end of it, something emerges and they're like, actually, I found the answer. I can do this. This is so easy and this is so small. But do you think it'll be effective? But they have found the answer. And I say, okay, that's your first step, right? You can find your first step. And then we
Yeah.
go on
Wow.
from there. I give them customized prompts depending on what they need at that time. So it's not like the session is all about writing. It's a combination of talking and just very pinpointed, short prompts, 2 minute, 3 minute pauses for them to write and get over the stumbling blocks so
Mm.
that they're not sitting there and being awkward. I don't know what I'm doing with this lady. What should I say next?
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah. Wow. I like that. I like that you use prompts that are customized to their needs, because I know
Yeah,
we have lots of these journals that have come out that even I tried to use, and somebody gifted me one as well. But I was just like, no, this prompt is not speaking to me, But I
exactly.
really like that you have those, because in the end, everybody's issue is different, and everybody's goal is. That's really beautiful to have that,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
Wow.
I have one of those journals that I keep trying to fill because I bought it. Now I want to
Yeah.
use it, and it's so pretty to look at. But I mean, all of those. The thing is, when you're making a journal, it is so generic. It could be a man, woman, child,
Yes.
anyone above 18, for example, still children, using it, that you have to make it general enough to be sort of
Sellable.
relatable to everyone. Exactly. Yeah, it does end up
Sellable.
being terrible. Like if I have a real issue that I'm going to solve, that I really want to solve, for example, drawing what kind of music I like, giving you a random example, that doesn't really help me.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
I have a goal in mind. I
Mm-hmm.
I don't want the fluff. I want to reach that goal, right?
Yes.
So yeah, so that's basically in short how it works. So we've covered so many things today, Zainab. I just wanted to pull it together, for our viewers, inshallah, and to give them something to take away. Let's
Mm-hmm.
say, someone is watching this video, right? And they're thinking, okay, I want to start on this journey of personal development. I want to begin improving. Maybe they've identified that they are one of the desi ladies who are stuck within that sort of zone, which is not helpful. But they might be thinking, okay, before I can get to coaching for whatever reason, whenever I can access it, before that, what can I do? What is the first step that I can take on my own? What would you say to them?
I think it's very important for ladies to understand that before they seek help, they need to understand that it is going to take time and it is going to take effort. Because God knows, I had people who've come, they've paid the money, and I have to tell them that you paid the money, you make the most of it. Don't just not turn up, you know.
Yeah,
So I think that sense of readiness, that I am willing to put in the work, like how we have this standard rule: you don't force people into therapy, they make their own appointment, they go on their own, they don't need, every
yeah,
somebody to carry them to therapy. It's
yeah,
the same thing with something like this. You
yeah,
need to understand that it will take work. And I
yeah,
know you're exhausted, I know you have 100 things already lined up and 10 people already asking you for your time. But if you're not willing to put in the time and effort, then accept it and tell yourself that I am not willing to put in the time, and sit with
mm,
that bitterness, because you will not be able to sit with it.
mm,
You can tell yourself that I don't have the time, but to tell
yeah,
yourself that I am not going to pursue self development or getting out of a problem because I choose to be occupied with the things that are occupying me, is a very unsettling feeling. But that
yeah.
acceptance has to come.
Wow, that's
So
really
pre
powerful.
any, yeah, pre any kind of signing up they do for anything, you have to accept that either you're in or you're out, and
Yeah.
frame it like that, that I chose to be in or I chose to be out.
Wow, that's really powerful. Basically, you're telling them to be extremely honest with themselves
Yes.
and then make the choice,
Yes.
so that they can never blame anyone else. They can never blame
Yeah, I'm
circumstances or
I'm a
life.
very brutal person. I talk
No, I
about death and I tell you to stab yourself with your heart. I'm really like that because I know that what happens is we are so overwhelmed that we almost want to get out of it, but we don't want to put in the effort because we're tired.
yeah, yeah.
But dude, the tiredness is not gonna get you anywhere anyway. So you
True,
you you
so
either
true.
give yourself that that very medicine, the bitter
Yes,
medicine, the
yeah,
truth.
the bitter medicine,
Yeah,
exactly. Okay,
yeah.
that's really powerful. Thank you so much, Zainab, for giving us your time and your insights. It's been such an enjoyable evening, and
Thank
inshallah,
you.
I hope that we can do this again because there is so much more still left to explore.
Yes, definitely. I'm very happy to be here. I was very excited for it from the moment you reached out to me, and also it's always good to catch up with a friend as well. So I'm really glad that I was able to come, and I was looking forward to having you. I mean, being on your podcast in the future, and best of luck with it.
Thank you so much, Zainab. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll just add your contact details in the caption below. Goal
So
Achievers, that is the name of the page, right?
yeah, but I am most active on my personal page because I just realized that I attracted all of my niche on my personal page. So it's
Right.
Hyderabadi Mom. It's Hyderabadi
Hyderabad.
Mom everywhere. The website is
Hyderabadi mom.
hyderabadimom.com. Yeah, yeah. It's I
Thank
really I tell people that there are many moms in Hyderabad, but there's only one Hyderabadi mom. You know,
Excellent. That's wonderful.
yes.
So Hyderabadi mom will be linked in the caption below, and then anyone who feels that you would be helpful to them, they can reach out to you and ask you
Yes,
about
thank
working
you.
together.
Right.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much, Zainab, and we will catch up soon, inshallah.
Sure. Thank you.